For those who are joining us for the first time, this is MCERC's, the Marine and Coastal Ecology Research Center channel, Ask a Scientist. And this is the program Whack-A-Mole. Sierra usually is the one that hosts us, but Sierra's on vacation tonight. So Annabelle and I are going to have a conversation, and we hope you take a look at some of the other videos that we've done in the past. Sierra's listed them. There's a place if you can subscribe, share, and like. That helps our RAs. It brings in more traffic to the channel and helps us support these kind of programs for our research assistants and our interns. So we would appreciate it if you would do that and then share the video. If you have questions, please put them in the comment center or any comments, and we'll pick those up and address them and get back to you so that everybody can participate. But tonight, Annabelle Stevenson, one of our rock star research assistants with MCERC, is here. I'm the director. My name is Mithriel MacKay. And Annabelle, why don't you tell a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Well, you already mentioned I'm a research assistant. I've been with the center for about a year now. I just moved to Atlanta. And I've been working with Dr. MacKay on some of the humpback whale research, as well as some of the manatee research. And some of our other RAs as well have been helping us work on that. So
I'm going to describe a little bit about what Whack-A-Mole is and where the name came from. And then I haven't told you what we're going to talk about tonight because I wanted it to be fresh and spontaneous. These conversations are meant to be really relaxed and unscripted. The name Whack-A-Mole came from the game. So if people aren't familiar with it, it's a carnival game where you walk up to it and there's kind of a table with holes in it, and these moles, these little, the little underground critters, just kind of come up and pop in the hole from every direction. You randomly have to try to, whack them with this hammer so it'll catch them as they come up in every direction. And the idea was that this conversation is supposed to go whatever direction it takes to go in, with no particular rhyme or reason or structure to it. So that's where that was adopted from. The conversation tonight is kind of a follow-up from other conversations that we've had. And we had one of these Whack-A-Mole conversations about with Dr. Joy Reidenberg, how do you get into marine biology? And I thought it would be kind of interesting to talk to you specifically, and then bring in some of the other people, another time. But you specifically go way back to your first thoughts about when you wanted to be a marine biologist, or even just a biologist, and how you went from those thoughts to getting into the university or college that you chose. So let's start there.
That's funny because I, growing up, never wanted to be a marine biologist or a biologist per se. When I was a kid, I always said I wanted to be a zookeeper, and my parents were like, you don't want to do that because you're just going to be cleaning up poop all day. And then when I went to college, I was just, like a regular biology major because I wanted to somehow get into the medical field or do physical therapy or something like that. And I very quickly changed my mind after taking just the general science classes that bio majors have to take. And then I had a minor in wildlife conservation because I really liked going outside, and I knew that they had the lab classes where you would go outside and spend just hours like catching frogs and measuring plants and just like being able to be outside and learning in that kind of environment. So I did that, and I was like, I should just make this my major because I'm enjoying this so much more. And I always liked animals and nature and all of that stuff. So it was an easy decision to make. So I made that my major. And then I never really thought about marine biology. I always thought it'd be an interesting field to go into, but didn't have the right vehicle to get there. But then I've always just been interested in mammals. So I think that kind of, when I think about it in that way, I'm like, I love terrestrial mammals, but marine mammals have just an extra interesting factor about them because I think that the ocean is like mostly mysterious to everybody,
Yeah, I think that's a common thread. People
Yeah.
just, okay, what is it? Where did it go? But you brought up a really interesting point. Well, a couple really, but a lot of people say, I think I want to be a marine biologist. And we talked last time about, should you be a marine biologist? I always tell people, don't be a marine biologist. And we've had that conversation. So if people want to know why I would say don't be a marine biologist, it doesn't mean I don't think you should do marine biology, but they can see the last conversation to kind of follow that thread. But I also mentioned, and so did other people, that where you want to be and how you want to spend your time is how you figure out what you want to do. And I'm kind of wondering, did you feel like you had what you need to help you figure out what you should major in? And if the answer is yes, what was it? If the answer is no, and you could rewind, how far back would you rewind in grade school, middle school, high school, university? At what point do you think there should be a set of tools or guidelines or help or whatever introduced to help people figure out what they should be when they grow up?
Right. I think, yeah, that is a hard question. The answer is I'm not sure, but when I was in high school and kind of in those more like formative years, I think was when I became more interested in science. I was always, when I was younger, I was really actually more into like art and doing like artistic things. And I remember, I think it was like sophomore year of high school or something, they always had an issue like on the first day of school where they messed up everybody's schedules. I don't know why, but it happened to everybody every single year. And I had to go to the office because they messed up my schedule. And they were like, the only way we can fix this is if you drop your art class and take something else instead. So, which I didn't want to do, and I was super mad about it. But there was no other way around it. So I dropped the art class and I ended up filling it with like an extra science class. I don't remember. It might've been like anatomy or environmental science, one of those. And then after that, I just kind of just kept taking science classes. And I think that's the part of my life where I kind of, switched more to the science side of things.
So now you're in a position where you've finished university. So you finished a bachelor's degree, right? And has anybody sat down with you at any point from the time you started university to where you are now? Because I know we haven't gotten to this point yet. Right. And said, where should you fit in to what you're doing? How do you decide, what do you do with the degree you have and the experience you've gotten and you're getting? How does that help you determine what to do next and what you should be doing with this? Because when people say, I want to be a marine biologist, which happens a lot, you could do anything from studying sand and little things to studying great big things, studying the ocean itself, to studying what lives in the ocean. Has anybody ever sat down with you, or have you even tried to figure out, what do I do with this now?
I don't think so. I don't think there's ever been that conversation with another person. I mean, of course, when you graduate college and you'll be talking to your friends and being like, I don't know what to do with my life. And I think that's like, that's just like what's going to happen in your early 20s. But there's never been that like sit down conversation with someone who I guess is older and wiser to like lead me through those things.
I don't know about the older and wiser part, but I'd like to think that having gone through it, to say, you know what, wouldn't it be nice if somebody had done this for me? And so I thought it would be interesting and hopefully helpful to you to do that. Let's do that now. And I know that when you go into social media and you look at different posts and you look at different groups, the one thing that keeps coming up constantly is, does anybody know, I want to start my university degree next year. I'm about to graduate high school, which for people that aren't in the US is finish, grade 12, going into university. Not sure where I should go. I'm not sure what I should do or how to get there or what to do with it. And so before I try to help people answer those questions, when they ask me that, I kind of go through this exercise to help people like you figure out what would make you happy. And we touched on this a tiny bit in the last one, but I thought, let's do this. And then after we do this, let's talk about how you feel about it, and then how you feel like what you're doing now. So you can describe it in a little bit more detail, some of the experiences that you're getting and the kind of things you're involved in, and I can help you talk about those. And if they're taking you where you want to be. So the first question I always ask everybody, let me get a big piece of paper. All I have is little pieces of paper in front of me, so I need something bigger to kind of organize this. All right, have my notebook, have my pen. All you have to do is just give some honest answers to yourself, and these aren't like hard, difficult questions. But what about weather? Is there some kind of weather that you really prefer, or do you need 4 seasons, or you prefer never to see another snowflake again? And you New Jersey, so
yeah,
cold weather, snow, 4 seasons type stuff.
Right. I honestly, I do need 4 seasons. I need that change throughout the year, but I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, I hate winter and I only need the summer. Like I like the cold and I like summer. I can really adapt to like any weather.
Okay. So if you had extreme heat but worked on the equator, you would miss it for a season.
Yeah. I don't know about extreme heat, but
okay. No, that's fair. Just trying to narrow this down a little bit. So then how about as far as travel? If you had to give an estimate out of how many months of the year or days of the year you want to have a home base versus travel, you can do it in percentages, by months, however you want to describe it, every other month. I really need a home base to go back and forth from. I don't care if I live out of a suitcase. Right now in your life, so right now, how would you see this?
Okay. I think right now, I would prefer to have a home base 60 to 70% of the time.
Okay.
Of the year, I guess, if that's how we're measuring it.
Okay. Now, this is the most difficult thing, which is coming up in another future WHAM, the Whack-A-Mole we call WHAM program, conversation about women in science. So without going in that direction, someday, do you think your family situation, your personal family situation, whether it's you have elderly parents or you plan on starting a family, or you actually want a relationship, because it can be hard to have a relationship if you travel a lot, or maybe it would be you don't care about having a relationship, or you want to have a relationship with somebody who travels with you. So let's do your 5, I always do this 1, 5, 10-year plan. So we'll call your 1-year plan your 60 to 70% of the time you like a home base right now. Your 5-year plan, how do you foresee that same question?
In 5 years, I think I would prefer to be traveling a little bit more, most likely, and probably be with someone who also travels a little bit of the time or would be open to traveling. I think that would be important.
So what percent of the time in 5 years would you like to be traveling with another person if you find the right person?
I would say maybe 50% of the time, maybe half and half.
Actually less, not more. Because you said you'd be traveling more.
Oh, yeah, I guess that is less.
Okay, so about half the time then.
I think I confused myself. Yeah, about half the time.
So is that right? So 60% of the time now, maybe see yourself in a relationship with somebody that would travel with you about half the time in 5 years?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and what about 10 years?
I think maybe in 10 years, it might actually be less, that I might want to travel less, depending on where I am in my personal life. If I decided to have a family, I think that would make things difficult.
So if you had a family, let's say 2.5 kids and a dog and a half, and a significant other, what do you think the percentage would be at that point in your life in 10?
Maybe 40%.
Okay, so you see yourself as the anchor person at home.
Perhaps.
Kids, okay. Okay. Now, your preference as far as living close to the coast or living inland, living on an island, living in the mountains, what do you see the landscape where you want to be, let's say, between now and the next 10 years?
I think I would prefer to live more close to a coast rather than inland. Like if it was, a decision between, what am I thinking of? If it was a decision between,
say you don't have a house, you just get an apartment, or you live in a giant RV, but you had to pick an RV park, where would it be?
I don't know if I would want to get like an RV.
I think I'm trying to narrow you down to pick a location and not worry about the rest.
Yeah, somewhere either on like the West Coast or the East Coast. I wouldn't want to like move to the middle of the country or anything like that.
Okay. What about United States versus another country?
I'm not opposed to living outside of the United States. I've always been like open-minded to that, but I think that certainly would be, that's always a scary decision to make, because if it's like totally out of someone's like comfort zone to move like to a totally new country.
Out of your comfort zone. It's actually not out of everybody's. There are some people that would be like, let's go. But we also touched on this, and maybe we should do another welcome.
Yeah, we did.
I think it's my experience that Americans have a harder time traveling abroad. We just don't know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that makes it really scary. I was accepted to colleges in Hawaii, and I didn't go because I had no idea how to do that. And neither did anybody around me to say, don't worry, we'll help you figure it out. So
I think that's the problem too.
Right. So if you were, let's say you don't even know what your dream job is now, but if you knew, if your dream job was offered to you, whatever that looks like at whatever point, and it was in some very far away place, but you had to move there, could you see yourself taking that job?
Yeah, possibly.
And then how often do you need to see your family?
Pretty often.
What does that mean?
Like maybe 4 times a year.
Okay. All right. Do you do better with, let's word it this way. What percent of the time do you need alone time?
50.
Okay. What percent of the time do you need a big crowd?
I would say the other 50%. I'm like half and half with that one.
Okay. What percent of the time do you need to be able to go to a mall to go shopping?
40%.
Okay. Okay. How important is it to have your own vehicle?
I would say pretty important.
Scale of 1 to 10.
1 to 10, like a 7.
Okay. Okay. How important is it to you to be in a leadership position, not high administration, but let's say you lead a project in your career on a scale of 1 to 10?
I would say 6.
Cool. How important is it to you on a scale of 1 to 10 that you have moved out, you have the option or the possibility to accomplish enough things to move yourself up the ladder until you do, you're in a management position with very little oversight?
I would say maybe like an 8.
Okay. So based on that, you said you terrestrial, so just general questions, you like terrestrial,
Mhm.
which is kind of nice because it's really kind of impossible to study marine stuff in general without, if you didn't do marine biology, animals, without
Yeah.
studying terrestrial animals and having some kind of a comparison. So you definitely like terrestrial animals. Have you figured out yet what you want to be involved in long term? Is it the animals themselves? Is it bigger projects? Is it the bigger, the ecology, the habitat? What is it that rocks your world right now?
I don't know that I have answered that question yet.
Okay.
That's like the biggest overall question, I think.
Okay. Okay. So let's look at those and let's kind of narrow down the easy stuff. You need 4 seasons. That means you need everything. If it were the United States, then we could draw a line kind of from North Carolina to like the Maritimes in Canada, so Nova Scotia, that area,
Mhm.
that latitude range, and then go around the globe that way. So Europe, definitely a lot of Europe will fall into that. And then you probably want to stop at North Carolina and cut out the equal latitudes from the equator down this way. And you could go South America, Australia, New Zealand,
Mhm.
and parts of Africa, right? And make this circle. So those are the 2 areas when you think about where do I want to be weather-wise that fit your description of where you're the happiest. Which is good to know, because if you decide you do want to stay in the United States,
Right.
well, there are islands that actually fit that are belong to the United States that you could potentially work in.
Mhm.
But if you like malls 40% of the time and you need big crowds some of the time to stay energized and some alone time, then you probably don't want to be on an island. You probably want to be on a coastal mainland somewhere.
Mhm. Right.
So, I mean, you're from New Jersey, so that kind of fits. That's home. Now, you may change your mind in some of this. If you travel the way you want to, you may go to other places and say, this fits me really well if I do this. But right now, you're kind of looking at Northern California to probably up through most of Washington State, maybe even some parts of Alaska, because Alaska has that kind of funny shape where the Juneau might be a really good place for you. You would still get 4 seasons in Juneau if you like Alaska, for example. Or maybe, New England, Maine might float your boat. But if you don't really want to shovel snow, you can go down Maryland, North Carolina, and you could be pretty happy down there. So that's not a lot of coastline, but in the United States, there's still a lot of jobs in that area.
Mhm.
So that's a good thing. So that right there kind of helps a little bit when you start looking for things, right?
Mhm.
And then, but you want to travel a lot. So that means you're probably looking for organizations that are a little bit more well-established, so that their positions may be satellites in different places. So if you got a job with some of those organizations, you knew that you could say, oh, I'll go to that conference, or I don't have a problem going here or there. But knowing that there'd probably be some opportunities to elevate yourself enough to lead projects, so that when you hit that goal 10 years from now, when you can see yourself maybe having a family and wanting to stay home more, you're still really embedded in an organization where that will be a possibility.
Mhm.
And to go in and out as you
Right.
want, less and less, but kind of pick and choose and send other people out. So you've narrowed it down quite a bit. Now you know the size of the organization pretty much, not that any of this is in stone, right? But you know about where you want to live. You want it to be coastal of a pretty populated area, or you'll never see them all. And you want a decent organization, maybe a mature organization, so that you have the possibilities of staying in or going out as you spend more time there. As far as going to another country, well, that's something you're gonna have to experiment with. And as you travel a little bit, you could land somewhere in those two donuts around the earth that we just kind of figured out are your comfort zone. And maybe you'll find one that you really like, or somebody in one of those that you really like, that you would like to be there. So that's kind of an unknown, which is nice not to have it all figured out at this point in your career anyway, and see more things. So there's that. One question I didn't ask you is about job security. How important is it to you to have a steady job with all the benefits and that kind of security and knowing where your paycheck's coming, as opposed to other things in our profession where you can go from contract to contract where you're working several jobs at a time?
Right. That's pretty important to me. I would say that's probably like a 9 or a 10.
Okay. So that's a really good thing to know about yourself, because you could at this point do something like protected species observer work, which you might really enjoy, but you wouldn't have those benefits. But that's contract to contract. People usually work for more than one company. You can get hired by a company to do it. That's a possibility, but mostly you get hired by several companies and you sort of piece together all the different things. It lets you travel sometimes, especially around the same country, or if you get certified in Europe, you could do both, but you wouldn't have benefits. So maybe at this point in your life, you could do it, but it wouldn't last very long if security is really important to you, and not knowing what your paycheck is going to be and trying to predict what your tax burden is going to be and how much money to put away and those kinds of things. That can be really more difficult. So you'd have to do some homework on that. But it sort of fits in. It could be one piece of things that you do. If you have a couple things you do at the same time, it gives you some flexibility and the travel to kind of scope some things out. So you might want to do something like that. Plus, if you get a job with some companies doing protected species observer, they fly you to where you need to be. All the different arrangements are made for you. And then you could also go for a job in a bigger company, like National Geographic. We'll just use that because that's everybody's gold standard for, I think, some of the things that we do. But if you were, Dr. Redenberg said that she had a career as a marine biologist, but also doing a film career, doing documentaries and things. And if you aim for something like that, those companies put you on salary, you get all the benefits. And if you're going to travel somewhere to do something, they make all the arrangements for you.
Right.
How you get from your house to the airport, how you're going to eat every day, and how you get home again. So that might be a really, really good fit for you right now, to find a company like that where you're the biologist doing the research and have all those kind of benefits and travel a lot, but still have a home base in between. So there's some possibilities for you, right? What else did you put here? Having your own vehicle. So if you have your home base, you can have your own vehicle. And I ask people that question because if they say, I don't care what I drive, then they're not going to care if they have a car either.
Right.
So if it's like, oh no, I have this classic car, I'm very into motorcycles, then you need some place to drive those, and staying on a boat full time and traveling everywhere is not going to get that for you. So that kind of helps piece that into that. So there's a beginning that starts to help you narrow down the kind of things you like. And where you are right now, it's a good time for you to start trying to make those contacts, or look and see if those jobs are advertised, and see what the job description says you have to have, so that you can build those skills.
Right.
So now, how do you feel about just that small conversation?
I think that definitely narrows it down, but it's still a lot to digest and think about.
It sure is. All right. So now we've got you in university. You took your classes. Then what did you do when you graduated?
I mostly was trying to figure out what it was that I wanted to do and what kind of jobs that I wanted to apply for. And I feel like that took a lot of time because there aren't too many jobs out there in our field or in the conservation field in general. And then, of course, the pandemic happened, which only added on to that. So kind of was in like this limbo situation with that.
So what did you do?
Not a whole lot. I mean, so now I'm working in retail because just to kind of, financially support myself. And then of course I found this internship, which helped me figure out the things that I would be interested in and the things that I would be good at with the skills that I already have, but also building upon new skills. So in a lot of ways, I'm still trying to figure out what exactly I want to do with my life, which I think is okay because I'm still pretty young, even though it feels like every year you're getting older and older. But I try not to be too hard on myself and put too much pressure on myself as far as that goes. And I know that I've talked to the other RAs about this as well. And we all kind of like feel the same way. But
So should this have happened in college, or is this the right time? Because a lot of people get out of college. When I got out of college with my clinical laboratory science degree, I knew what I was going to be. I knew exactly where I was going to go, and I had the skill set to do it. And the conversations with people that are about to graduating or that have graduated are, and this is where you come in, and this is going to be another more in-depth conversation I'm sure Sierra is going to gather people to talk about later, is why should I have an internship? I have my degree. I went to college to learn what I needed to learn to do this job. So should you have gotten more in college? Do you think that's possible? Or is this just part of the deal that you, now being where you are, can't see how you could have gotten this in college or somewhere in between?
Right. Well, I think that's what Sierra was talking about last time, is like, I wish that I would have done more internships in college and tried to get as much experience at that age so that after you graduate, you kind of have a better idea of what direction to go into. So I think in that way, that would have been a lot easier. But of course, it's easy to like regret the things that you didn't do, but moving forward, I think.
I was kind of going with what should the university be responsible for? So and I'm going to go back to clinical laboratory medicine because it's as much of a vocation as it is a degree in science, where the program that I was in was integrated. So it was kind of like 3+12 months, where, now a lot of times in the States, especially, it takes you more than 4 years to graduate. But at the time I was in school, it didn't usually do that. It was a solid 4 years, and that was it. But most of the programs for clinical lab medicine were that you went to school for 4 years, and then you went to school 1 more year to a clinical lab science college, or you went to a 4-year program, and when you finished, you have the degree. Program I was in was 4 years of college, but an additional summer in the middle. So when you finished your 3rd year, you were immediately in lab school for 12 months and graduated at the end of the 12 months. And so we got the integrated internship. We did clinical rotations and all those things while I was still getting my bachelor's degree. So should the universities take more responsibility to have internships integrated into the program, even if it means that your program is longer, to make that happen?
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea for sure. Or even just like classes that have you do more like field work or research techniques, something that would give you those skills that after you graduate, you can kind of be like, oh, I'm already familiar with this, and I can still be trained to do it, but I have some kind of idea what it takes to do these kinds of things. But I do think it would be a good idea if universities even just require you to do an internship or something before you graduated, like in that major. And I know a lot of schools do, or a lot of majors do. Mine didn't though, for some reason. But I think that also the universities that have career services or something like that, a lot of students don't know how to fully take advantage of those resources. So I think that that's another issue as well.
Yeah, there's models in other countries where there's a different philosophy. In the United States, you get a core body of knowledge, which we've talked about the advantage and the disadvantage in our groups, that if you have this core body of knowledge, if you finish with a degree in marine biology and you decide you want to be a lawyer, you can do that in the States, where in some other countries you're so specialized, even from the time you're in, grade school, that you can't switch because you don't have any of that core courses underneath you.
Right. Yeah.
But requiring an internship could be a solution to that, maybe 2 summers in between in your program, or you'll have to stay longer until you complete so many hours, which is not an uncommon thing to do in our field. So, but provide that upfront, saying you're going to have to do this before you do it. And here is a list of professors you can go to that can help you figure out to either do it with them or to, help you figure out how to do that and go about doing that. Might be helpful. Okay, so let's say that never happens.
Okay.
And because there's enough schools that it doesn't happen, and you graduate and you've got this degree in marine biology. And remember, universities and colleges are a business, so they've got to get you knowing everything that you need to know to be able to have people say or not say, oh, they went to that school, so they didn't learn very much because you're spending so much time in internships, right? So, and they have to make sure that the courses that they need for every program are filled enough to satisfy that, or they'll just have to become a university of one course, which doesn't make any sense. So there's limitations that the universities have as well to keep that going. That's another conversation for another day. But let's just say every college in the world, everybody graduates the way you did. You get your 4-year degree in marine biology, sound, or whatever your degree is, because sound body of knowledge. Should you be hired from that point on? So this goes to paid versus not paid, which I really don't want to get into in this conversation.
Right.
But how much did you feel when you came to MCERC? Or did you do anything before you came here? I can't remember now.
Just some volunteering things, but nothing that was like an internship or that helped me within the marine bio field or anything like that.
Okay, so coming to MCERC, you came with a degree and good sound core body of knowledge in there. Do you feel now that you had enough of an education with your degree to do a job? Or did it help you recognize that you really had a lot to learn before you were able to be an employee in the field, or somewhere in the middle? How did that work for you?
I would probably say somewhere in the middle, because I think the problem with college, and this is just my opinion, I'm not speaking for anybody else, but is that you focus a lot on reading the textbooks and getting the grades, and sometimes you get so stressed out with your classes that it's like you're really just kind of aiming towards that end goal. And if they're not offering some kind of internship courses or capstone research courses or anything like that, then you're kind of at that point where you know how to do Microsoft and you know how to read a textbook and you know how to take exams, but you don't have all those other skills to help you do everything else that a job is going to have you perform.
So you're in retail. When you started retail, I'm guessing that you had to be trained in your job, right?
Yeah.
You didn't walk in and they just said, okay, you're on shift, I'm going home, you're good to go. Compare that to, had you come to MCERC and we had given you the same, the same weighted, I don't know how to explain this, amount of training, and said, okay, now you're good to go. If we had done that when you started, compare those two experiences and how you felt like, how much training you needed in retail versus how much training you needed or still need to feel like you could be a full-time employee at a place that did marine biology.
Right. Yeah, that's hard to compare the two because they're so different. But I feel like when it comes to MCERC, I needed a little bit more mentoring and a little bit more training to just kind of understand what was expected of me, but also how to go about the things or the projects that we were working on. But in retail, it's similar in the sense that you're trained, but learning new things kind of never stops. There's always like a new problem that you're going to run into from day to day. So in a way, they're similar. I feel like training never needs to stop. You can always like learn new things and have someone teach you those things.
How long did it take you in retail before you felt like you could walk in a shift and do your job and just have somebody to go to for questions?
Maybe like a week and a half.
How about an MCERC?
I would say maybe like a month or 2 months.
So
something around that timeline.
Okay, so walking into MCERC, what was the first project that you worked on?
It was the Manatee Epiclif project.
Okay.
Or I should say the Manatee Citizen Science Project. And so my goal or my role in that project was to reach out to people and try to gather photos of manatees and try to network in that way.
How long did it take you before you could do that independently with just asking a few questions?
Yeah, maybe probably less than a month.
Okay, so right now you're good to go in the Manatee Citizen Science Project and get all the data that you need and organize that.
Yeah.
And set up the database. Okay, so what else are you involved in?
Writing publications, working on other humpback whale research as well, including the catalog.
How long is it taking you to be trained on and learn how to write a publication?
Well, that is taking a lot longer because writing publications, and we're coming to realize, me and the other RAs, that it's involves a lot of specialized skills that we didn't learn in undergrad, or I should say wasn't emphasized in undergrad. So we're kind of having to do that thing where it's like doing it over and over and over again until we feel like we're confident enough to write it on our own. But
undergrad, bachelor's degrees don't typically write publications.
Right, exactly.
I think that's because we don't teach you how to do it, that you don't have more. I think you could help a lot more with it, but it's just these things that teaching people how to write is very difficult in the United States right now. I find it especially difficult. That's a complicated issue, but so to be fair, that's an elevated skill that takes a long time. I would argue with the Manatee project, it probably took you about 4 months because we're still writing emails together and things like that. There's a lot to do. And yes, you have to be constantly trained, but it's also not something that was all you did full time. It's not the same job.
Yeah.
That I think is the most difficult part of this, is that you are not doing the same job every day. So yeah, I mean, it's going to take a few years before we say, okay, you're comfortable in this slot doing this over and over, let's move you to something else, which is something we're already doing. But before you can just say, okay, you guys run the place while I go and do this project out of the country for a couple of weeks. If it were, none of you are full-time either. So that's important to say. These are all not full-time positions. That takes a long time to get to that point because it is so different constantly and every project evolves, right? But the humpback whale work that you're doing, part of that is organizing data literature searches, and you've been very involved in the humpback whale catalog for a few months now, helping to get that put into the cloud, which is something that you're working on, so that we have remote access to all the images from the cloud and all that kind of stuff. So, okay, so now we've talked about where you started, how you went to university, and now where you are, and now where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
Yeah, that's the question that I have the hardest time answering, because I don't even know what I'm having for dinner tonight. No, really, I really don't. But so I'm so I'm constantly kind of thinking of that question in my head and being like, I I don't know where I'm going to be in 5 years, but I think that that's okay because there's between now and 5 years from now, there's going to be all these opportunities that come up and things that you're going to have to say yes or no to. And I think sometimes it's fun to just kind of see where things go. And in 5 years, you'll be like, oh, I never thought I would be doing this, you know?
Yeah, life's a marathon, right? Not a sprint, that kind of thing. So that's really good. So now bringing us full circle, what do you want to tell people that are in grade school right now that say, I want to be a marine biologist? What should they do? What's your best
grade school, like
11th, 12th grade, they're applying to
like high school age? I think the best advice I would give is if they, let's say we're like, oh, I want to be a marine biologist, to kind of maybe in between college or in between high school and college, try to get some kind of experience that would give them some more insight into what that's going to be like, so that when they go to college, they can kind of focus on that more and know what kind of internships to look for, know what kind of experiences that they want to get.
How do they do that? Would you have known in 11th or 12th grade how to do that?
No, but I wish that I did.
How do they do that?
So I feel like high school should have some kind of like programs that help students, you know, figure that out or discover that themselves. I know some do. There are some high schools that do have programs like that, but I don't think a lot do. But I think that a lot of students could benefit from that.
And they're not very involved, because I speak to a lot of high school students and to various programs and volunteers and people that reach out. I do this a lot. What do you do? And I mean, they're 30-minute to an hour talks, right? Which is why we're doing this, to kind of help people. So when I was in school, I was first generation, kind of second generation. I had one uncle that went to college first. My mother went to college to be a nurse at the same time I did. So nobody there to help me and say, this is how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of high schools that do career day and they let you do the quizzes to see which fields you would go best in, but nobody sits there afterwards and does anything. Whether it's like, oh, you fit really great into being a marine biologist. And so they have resources, or they have a 30-minute talk. How would you tell them to go find mentors to figure out how to be involved enough to figure out if this is what they want to do and how to get to where they want to be? Like really practical, good experience that you have emphasized several times now would be the thing, right? So how did they figure that out?
I think the best way to try to research and network with people who do something that you might be interested in doing would most likely be through social media, especially these days. Because, I know with us, we have Facebook groups and, we're part of all these different groups. And so we can kind of keep in contact with all these different professionals in that way. So I think for people who are younger, maybe like in 11th or 12th grade, for them, and they're like so savvy with social media, that would be the best way for them to go about it.
So then what do they do?
I would say to try to join groups and follow people, add people who share similar interests as you, and you can try to network in that way.
Okay, so you've got a little sister who's in high school. She has been accepted to a university with a goal of studying marine biology.
Mm-hmm.
She's going to graduate May 2022 from high school. And she needs internships and experience and to talk to people. How are you going to tell her to do that? I mean, saying, okay, you need to go on social media and network. That really, getting on social media means something to those kids. Networking, not really sure they would understand how to do that. So practical advice, what are you going to tell her?
I don't know. Because I'm just thinking back to myself and being like, I don't even know how I would maneuver that. But I think it would be most practical. Obviously, there are kids that age aren't like so into, networking with professionals. But if she really had a goal of, okay, I'm going to college, I know I want to do marine biology, I think it would be in her best interest to know who in that field at that university is like the head of the marine bio department, or who are the advisors, and try to get connected with them in that way. Because going into college, they'll be, they'll recognize her name, and that could get you places.
And you said get connected though, but that doesn't mean anything to a 12th grader.
Right.
How do they get connected? So what would you tell her to do? She's going to say, but Annabelle, I don't know how to do that.
I want to say like through email, but I know people don't like to be bothered through email. So maybe that's not.
I think people don't like to be harassed through email, or have demands put on them through email.
Right.
And different than, when somebody emails me and says, hey, can you help me out with this? I have to be careful not to let people put me in a role to be their advisor, because I don't know anything about them. And if I did that to everybody that contacted me, I would be doing nothing else. I guess I could do consulting and say, hey, I'm out here to be your advisor for a fee, but ethically and morally, that's not a good fit for me. Maybe it would be a good niche for somebody as a business to say, hey, I'll do internship stuff for you, right? Mm-hmm. I'm good at networking, and I can do this, which is something people kind of do in a way. Some of these courses that are advertised for marine biology, I think, are trying to fill that role, to network people, right? So you could be a professional networker, but what advice would you give her? Annabelle, I don't know how to talk to these people. How do I get them to want to listen to me so that I can see?
Yeah, that is actually a hard question to answer. I'm not sure, to be honest. I would say the best bet would be through email, but I feel like I'm missing something very pivotal here.
What would that email look like?
Something just casual, like to introduce herself to maybe, let's say like one of the advisors or professors of a class that she knows she's going to take. Something casual, introductory, like, oh, I'm excited to take your course. I'm really looking forward to learning these new things. I want to be involved in marine biology, something along those lines.
Okay, but that doesn't, so what is she asking for? Like, what should she ask for? So she's met me. So I'm teaching, and she's met me, and she said, hi, I'm going to be taking a class. I'm going, oh, hi, nice to meet you. Mm-hmm. But how does that get her to do an internship?
Well, I mean, obviously, along the lines of her taking her course, she'd probably, I feel like it'd be more appropriate for her to ask for an internship if she was already taking your class and not necessarily before. So let's say that she met you like the summer before taking your class. You kind of already like have an idea of who she is. She's taking your class. And then let's say in the middle semester, she's more interested in doing an internship. I think the best way to go about that is to ask what kind of things you're involved with outside of teaching. And, would you be open to having her on board as part of the team and teaching her some of these skills?
Okay, so that makes me tired. The thought of a freshman year classes are anywhere from 100 to 300 students in them in your 101 biology classes, right?
Right.
And everybody wants an internship for me to teach them something. How do I do that? I can't is the answer, right?
Right, yeah. I guess in my head, I was picturing more of like a 30-person class, but realistically, you're right. There are going to be bigger classes.
So now what? Now what does your sister do? I mean, even small colleges can have 300 kids in Bio 101.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, these are all the things that I wish I knew. So I don't know how to answer it in that way, because I didn't know how to take advantage of these things either at that age.
So we need to have another one of these talks.
Right.
bunch of high school kids and maybe some seasoned people, not necessarily professors, right? Just people that have a bachelor's degree and working in jobs maybe.
Mhm.
And how did you guys all get where you're going? How to figure out how to tell these younger people who are coming in what to do with their summer. And then, there's the concept of gap year.
Mhm.
And one thing that I teach people in our CV course that, we are going to get on the calendar, but people always say, oh, I needed a break. And I'm like, no. You don't take a break. You take a year to get experience.
Right.
Taking a break conveys a message that you're exhausted and you're burnt out. And that's not subliminally, even that's not somebody I want on my team, right? But if you took a year to get some experience, you can focus and figure out what you actually want to do. That's, to me, that's maturity. That's a different message that you send. But what things work and what things don't? How do you talk to somebody when you're one of 300 people? And you know what my emails are like. I get buried in emails. You've seen my
exactly.
Yeah, so I would love, and I have a really hard time not answering everybody. I try to answer all the people that made an effort to reach out to me, and I'm sure that I don't, but it's really hard. But at the same time, I feel for people because that's what we specialize in doing, is getting people the experience, kind of cover that, bridge that gap between what did they learn in college and the skills that they need and the mentoring to be able to step into a job and be really happy that they're in the job they're in, and have people be really happy that they stepped in that way, because it's not going to take you a year to learn how to do the job. They can train you for the job, but you have the skills and you have an understanding on how it all works. How you bridge that gap. So that conversation would be really good. So are you happy where you are right now? And I don't mean for MCERC, I'm not putting you on the spot that way, but just in your life path, are you frustrated it's taking you so long? Are you pretty happy at the pace? Are you wishing it would hurry up? Are you glad that it didn't go too fast?
I feel like that might change from day to day, depending on your mood. I used to be, I would say like a couple months ago, I probably was more frustrated that it was taking so long, but now I'm more in this kind of like content zone where I'm like, it'll happen and I don't need to stress myself out about it too much.
Yeah, you guys are now all learning to write for grants.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of reality checks in the position you're in right now. And one of them is that money is not something that comes easily to people who do what we do. You have to really go find it and really work for it. And it takes a lot of time and energy. And if you want to be that person coming in the door that gets the job, coming in the door and saying, I know the job, I have the skills, I have the experience, and I know how to get money to bring into the organization, that's a big deal. So you guys are all part-time, but you're working towards writing grants and with the idea that you find your own position, and the more that you learn to do, and of course we obviously were supporting your internship for you or your research assistantship, but trying to motivate you to really write grants, learn how to write them and understand it's not easy to do. And the reward is that the grants that we're writing for include money to pay you guys at the same proportion that you're working independently to get you paid. So that's yet another conversation. These are all, that's why Sierra's doing this whole thing. What else do you want to say before we wrap this up?
I would say and I know that Sierra said this last time, instead of, being too hard on yourself about all the things that you should have learned or that you could have learned or everything that you could have gotten involved in, just make a mental note of that and try to improve on those things going forward, because it does show, that you've like improved on yourself,
Yeah, it's a long road. So I know I surprised you with this tonight. I didn't tell you what we were going to do, but I'm glad, because I really didn't want you to overthink any of it.
No, it was good this way. It was more natural.
Yeah, this is unusual. I think most of these conversations are going to be group conversations.
Mhm.
And the hours have been flying by when we've been doing this.
Yeah.
I'm sure Sierra's going to link everything that's supposed to be linked and probably add an intro and all those fancy things that I am not going to attempt to do. But we can look at the comments, over tonight, the next week or so, and see how that goes. And then I think Sierra's back tomorrow.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so she can distribute, touch base, and do all those cool things, and then maybe pick upon some of these things that we talked about for some of the future conversations. And I think you had mentioned that one of the topics we're planning on doing soon is a conversation about women in science.
Mhm.
Get all together and talk about that, but with men on it as well.
Yeah.
I would love to see people your age talk about your experience, and people my age and older talk about our experience. It's probably not that different. But also have younger men involved in that conversation about your age, and men older than me, generally,
Mhm.
10 years older than me, which would put them in their late 60s and older, whatever.
Yeah.
Because
I think that would be a fun topic to cover, I think.
that might take a really long time and a few
Time, yeah.
I suspect the younger men will still have some of those. We'll see if I'm right. Some of those just behaviors that they don't even realize they're having, and not think about doing it. And that younger women do it. Me with the word just, so that can come in the conversation, that you don't realize you were taught things that are kind of self-defeating. You just do it naturally. And then the older generation that thinks how many experiences are the same. What hasn't changed between the way I was treated as a woman in my jobs and the way you're treated as a woman in your jobs? And then we work by accident, not by design, with all females right now, just because of the transition we're in, the guys that we're here right now. But maybe we can even talk Daniel into coming back in and having that conversation, since he's
I was thinking of him when I was thinking of guests that should be on the panel. I was like, oh, we should bring Daniel back, to talk about data analyzing or something.
Daniel was, so people know, did an internship with us, and he's from the UK, and he was the only guy in a group of several women. But he does not like these public conversations, so we'll have to see what we can do to bring him into it. But thanks for letting me surprise you. And we hope Sierra had a wonderful vacation, but we miss her, and we'll be very happy to see her back. And then congrats to you and Iris, really stepping up the activity on the Citizen Science Project. So for people that don't know, they get to see your face, and maybe you and Iris can introduce yourselves pretty soon in a little video and post it on a couple of Facebook pages so people can contribute to that data as well, and see, fresh faces that have been behind the scenes and now stepping into the front. So thanks for all that.
And that'll be exciting to work on with her as well.
Yeah, and having her speak Spanish and being able to kind of bridge that language gap, even though a lot of people that speak Spanish speak English, it's nice to have your first language be there too. So I think she's looking forward to that as well. So hopefully we'll get people excited that maybe didn't feel like they could participate as fully to be able to win there. And there have been other people that speak languages. I have a list of people that have volunteered to help out too. So we can start that as well. Always a lot to do, but great. Well, thanks for sharing all that. And I guess I will see you soon.
All right. See you later.
Bye.